My name is Elena Pierce. I'm 30 years old, and the day I buried my sister was the day my world cracked open. It was early spring, the kind where the air still bites your skin but the birds pretend it's summer. The church smelled like lilies and rain, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes and makes you feel smaller than your pain. My sister, Clara, was 26. She should have been alive. She should have been sitting beside me, whispering jokes about how our small town pretended to be holy for one day of the year. But instead, she was lying in a polished oak coffin that looked too expensive for someone who once had to borrow money for textbooks. When the priest said her name, my hands went cold. I wasn't crying, not because I didn't want to, but because the tears had already run dry 3 nights ago when I found her photo taped to her bathroom mirror with a note written in her handwriting. Don't believe him. Those 3 words had been eating me alive ever since. I didn't know who him was. I had an idea, though, and that idea was standing at the edge of the grave in a black wool coat, looking too calm for a father who'd just lost his child. My father, Richard Pierce, was a man who measured emotions like money. He gave them only when they benefited him. A businessman, charming to strangers, cruel to family. My mother had left when I was 12, said she couldn't breathe in a house full of secrets. Clara was 16 when she told me, "Dad's the kind of man who hides truth under gold plates."
I didn't understand then. Now I did.
After the service, people hugged me, said the same tired lines. "She's in a better place. She'll always be with you." But no one noticed how Dad kept checking his watch, impatient, like he had somewhere else to be. We drove from the cemetery in silence. The sky was bruised gray, and every raindrop that hit the windshield sounded like a countdown. I sat in the back seat, clutching Clara's old necklace, the silver one with a small locket shaped like a heart. I had found it in her drawer 2 days before, the last piece of her I could touch. When we reached the old bridge near the river, Dad slowed down. Then, without saying a word, he pulled over to the side. His hands were gripping the steering wheel, so tight his knuckles turned white. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just got out of the car, walked to the trunk, and pulled out a small wooden box. It looked worn, carved with patterns I'd never seen before. I stepped out, confused and shaking from the cold.
"Dad."
I called again. He turned to me with that same stone face. "Stay in the car, Elena." Something inside me refused. I followed him as he walked down the muddy path toward the edge of the riverbank. The current was strong from the rain, water roaring like it wanted to swallow the earth. He stood there for a long second, staring at the box as if it held something that burned. Then, with one hard swing, he threw it into the river. It splashed, sank, and vanished. I froze. "What was that?" I yelled over the sound of rushing water. He turned, eyes narrow. "It doesn't matter. It was just junk. Your sister wanted it gone." My heart dropped. "You're lying." His jaw tightened. "Enough, Elena. Go home." That was the moment something in me snapped, not loud, but quiet, sharp, like glass underfoot. Because I knew my father. I knew his tone. And that tone meant he was hiding something. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the river haunted me. I kept replaying the way his hands trembled just before he threw the box, not with grief, but with guilt. Clara's note.
His lie.
The box. They were all pieces of the same puzzle. The next morning, I drove back to the bridge. The water was calmer now, reflecting the dull silver of the sky. I walked down to the spot where he had stood. The ground was still soft from the rain. My shoes sank in the mud. I stared into the water until my vision blurred. Somewhere beneath that surface was the truth my father wanted gone. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. When I got home, I searched through his office, drawers, files, even his safe. Nothing. But then, in the bottom drawer of his desk, under a pile of tax papers, I found a letter addressed to Clara Pierce. It was unopened, dated 2 months before her death. My fingers trembled as I read the sender's name, Dr. Mason Leary, from St. Christopher's Research Clinic. I had never heard of it. I tore it open. Inside was a formal notice. "Dear Miss Pierce, we have concluded the results of your DNA submission. Please contact us immediately to discuss the findings before releasing the official report. DNA submission. My sister? Why would Clara be doing a DNA test? The letter was unsigned. No details. Just a phone number. I dialed it. The number was disconnected. My pulse raced. Something told me my father knew exactly what those results were, and that's why the box had to disappear. That evening, I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the locket again. I pressed the tiny clasp, and for the first time, it opened. Inside was a picture of Clara and me when we were little, and behind it, a folded piece of paper so thin I almost missed it. It was another note, handwritten, faint. If something happens to me, ask Dad about the river house. The river house. Our family used to have a small cabin near the edge of the same river. My father stopped taking us there when I was a teenager, said it needed repairs. We never went back. That night, I couldn't breathe thinking about it. The next day, I told him I was going to visit Mom's grave out of town, a lie. Instead, I drove toward the old river road, where weeds grew through cracks in the asphalt and the woods seemed to swallow the light. The cabin was still there, half-rotten and silent. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything smelled of damp wood and old secrets. The wallpaper was peeling, furniture covered in white sheets. And on the mantel, I swear I stopped breathing, sat a second wooden box. Identical to the one he threw away. I walked toward it slowly, heart hammering in my chest. Dust coated the lid, but the carvings were clearer now. 2 initials, RP and CP, my father's and my sister's. The lid wasn't locked. I lifted it. Inside was a stack of papers tied with a blue ribbon. And on top, a photograph. My father holding a baby. Not Clara. Not me. A third child. A baby with dark eyes and curly brown hair. Under it, written in my mother's handwriting. For Clara, when she's ready to know the truth. My vision blurred. My hands trembled so badly the picture fell to the floor. The papers beneath were medical forms, adoption documents. My sister wasn't my father's biological daughter. And then it hit me, the DNA test. She must have found out. She must have confronted him. And that's why he got rid of the box, to erase the proof. Tears burned my eyes as I sank to the floor. Clara's last words echoed in my head. Don't believe him. I understood now. But there was one thing I didn't yet know, how far my father would go to keep that truth buried. Because as I stood to leave, headlights flashed through the broken window. My father's car. He was here. I froze, heart pounding, as his footsteps crunched on the gravel outside. Clara, I heard him whisper through the wind, his voice trembling, haunted. Then louder, Elena? I backed away, holding the box tight against my chest. The door creaked open. His silhouette filled the frame. His eyes locked on the box in my arms, and in that single moment, I saw something I'd never seen before.
Fear.
Put that down, he said, voice shaking. You don't understand. My throat tightened. Then make me. He stepped closer, rain dripping from his coat. That box ruins lives. Yours included. And before I could speak, he lunged for it. I ran. Out the back door, through the rain, slipping on mud, clutching the box like it was my sister herself. His voice chased me through the night, a mixture of anger and desperation. By the time I reached the car, my hands were trembling too hard to find the keys. I finally started it, slammed the door, and drove away with the box on the passenger seat. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the middle of the road, soaked and hollow-eyed, watching me disappear into the dark. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival. The rain didn't stop the whole drive home. It hit the windshield so hard it felt like the sky itself wanted to bury the truth I had just stolen. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't breathe properly. The box sat beside me like a living thing, humming with everything my father didn't want me to know. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door twice and placed the box on the table. My hands were still trembling, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I couldn't let fear make me stop. Not now, not after losing Clara. I untied the blue ribbon around the papers. Some were medical records, others were letters. Each one carried dates that made no sense. The oldest was from 26 years ago, the year Clara was born. The first page was a letter from my mother, written in her delicate cursive. Richard, I can't keep living like this. You promised me you'd tell her when she's older. But you lied again. I'm leaving, and I'm taking Elena. If you still love either of them, you'll stop pretending you're the hero in this story. My throat went dry. So that's why Mom left. She didn't abandon us, she ran away from him. The next few pages were official documents: certificate of adoption, legal guardianship, consent waiver. The biological mother's name was redacted with thick black ink. But there was one signature left untouched: Richard Pierce. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the name. Every memory of my father replayed like a film on fast-forward. His lectures about loyalty, his pride in keeping the family name clean, his disgust whenever Clara questioned him. He'd built his whole life on control. And Clara had broken it. I picked up the last letter in the box. It was addressed to me. The handwriting was shaky, but familiar. Elena, if you're reading this, then I failed to protect the truth. Dad won't let you see it, but you deserve to know. We aren't who he says we are. You'll find everything at the old clinic, by the docks. There's a folder under my name, but be careful. He's been watching me for months. Love you more than anything, Clara. The old clinic. I remembered it, St. Christopher's Research Clinic. The same name from the letter I'd found in his desk. It had shut down years ago after some scandal about falsified records. For a second, fear clawed at me. Clara had gone there. She'd probably found something she wasn't supposed to. And if my father had been watching her for months, then maybe. I didn't want to finish that thought. But another voice inside me whispered louder. You have to. That night, I packed a small bag, tucked the wooden box inside, and left before dawn. The clinic was about an hour's drive outside town. The road wound through stretches of fog and pine trees that looked like ghosts in the early light. When I finally reached it, the building was exactly as I remembered: 3 stories of crumbling stone and shattered windows, vines crawling up its face like veins. The front door was padlocked, but one of the side windows had been broken. I climbed through, brushing glass from my jacket. The air inside was heavy with mold and silence. Dust floated in the sunlight slanting through the cracks in the roof. My footsteps echoed against the linoleum floors as I walked through what used to be the reception area. A rusted sign still hung on the wall: St. Christopher's, where science serves family. The irony made me sick. Clara's letter said her folder was somewhere here. I searched room by room: empty drawers, broken cabinets, peeling charts. Then I reached the archive room. The door was half open, as if someone had been there recently. Rows of metal filing cabinets stretched across the room like tombstones. I started scanning the labels. A C, D, F, patient records 1995 to 2000. My fingers traced the drawers until I found one marked Pierce, C. It was locked. I knelt down, trying to pry it open. After a few minutes, it gave way with a metallic screech. Inside were folders, not one, but several. I pulled out the first. The cover read, Subject CP03. My sister's initials. I opened it, and what I saw made my skin crawl. The pages weren't medical records. They were experiment logs. Subject CP03 displayed favorable genetic markers for Phase 2 trial. Consent provided under parental supervision of RP. Adoptive father signed continuation order. Biological lineage classified. Further study recommended due to anomaly in twin genome data.
Twin.
My stomach flipped. Twin genome data? The next page was worse. There was a photo, Clara as a child, sitting in a sterile room with wires attached to her arm. The caption read, Age 6, baseline analysis. I couldn't breathe. My father had signed her into some kind of experimental program. That's why her name was in the clinic records. That's why she had done a DNA test, to prove what he'd done. And then on the last page, typed in faded ink, siblings sample lost. Subject CP04 presumed deceased. CP04. That meant there had been another child. Another sister. One my father never told us about. I clutched the file to my chest and backed away. My mind was spinning so fast it felt unreal. I wanted to scream, but the air in that room was too heavy to carry sound. Then a noise. A footstep. I turned. Someone was standing at the doorway. Looking for something? It wasn't my father's voice. A tall man in his late 40s stepped into the light, wearing a maintenance uniform. His badge read M. Leary. Dr. Mason Leary. The name from the letter. I froze. He looked older, gaunter, but his eyes were sharp. You're Elena, right? You look just like your mother. My pulse roared in my ears. You knew her? He nodded slowly. We all did. She tried to stop this. What is this? I demanded. He sighed and leaned against the wall. Your father wasn't just a donor or a participant. He was one of the financiers. This clinic wasn't about treatment, it was about creating compatibility. Your sister was part of a genetic study. You were supposed to be, too. The room tilted. Me? He stepped closer. They tested hundreds of infants, matching DNA sequences for organ compatibility, for future transplants. Your father agreed to it when your mother was pregnant. Clara was adopted later as part of a parallel experiment. But your mother pulled you out. She ran. My voice broke. So Clara found out, didn't she? She did the DNA test to prove it. Dr. Leary's expression darkened. She came here last year. I told her to stay quiet. 2 weeks later, she was dead. The world seemed to slow. I whispered, Did my father? He didn't answer directly. Let's just say some people don't like ghosts coming back to life. I felt sick. My father wasn't just controlling. He was dangerous. He'd killed the truth before. He might do it again. Dr. Leary glanced at the file in my hands. You shouldn't have come here alone. He'll know. Know what? That you found the second box. That you found me. Before I could react, a distant sound echoed through the hall. The slam of a car door. Dr. Leary's face went pale. It's him. We ran. Through the corridors, past shattered windows and collapsed ceilings. The echo of footsteps followed, steady, deliberate. We reached the back exit, but it was chained shut. Dr. Leary pushed me toward a narrow staircase. Go. There's an old emergency exit upstairs. What about you? He hesitated. I'll distract him. No, I shouted. You can't. But he was already gone. I sprinted up the stairs, lungs burning. The building creaked beneath me like it was alive. I burst through a rusted door onto the second floor, the emergency exit sign flickering above a cracked window. Behind me, I heard voices. My father's. Cold and controlled. Where's she, Mason? Then a gunshot. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't dare look back. I shoved the window open and climbed out, scraping my arm on the broken glass. The rain hit my face like needles as I dropped to the ground below. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. By the time I looked back, smoke was curling from one of the windows. I didn't know if Dr. Leary was alive. I didn't even know if I was. But I knew one thing for certain. My father wasn't going to stop until he erased everything that proved who he really was. As I sped down the highway, the folder on the passenger seat glowed faintly under the streetlights, its metal clip catching the light. Next to it, the wooden box sat silently, my sister's final witness. And for the first time since the funeral, I said her name out loud. Clara, I'll finish what you started. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the echo of that gunshot, saw the flash behind Dr. Leary's face as he pushed me away. My mind kept replaying the look in his eyes, not fear for himself, but pity for me. By morning, I was still driving. I didn't even know where I was going, just that I needed distance from the town, from my father, from the memories clinging to every corner of my life. The sky was turning pale blue when I pulled over at a rundown motel by the highway. I checked in under a false name. The woman behind the counter didn't look up from her newspaper as she slid me the key. Inside, the room smelled of dust and bleach. I closed the curtains, double-locked the door, and set the wooden box and folder on the bedspread. I stared at them like they were living things, one born from my sister's desperation, the other from my father's lies. The folder was still damp from the rain. I flipped through it again, forcing myself to look at every page, every photograph. The clinical notes, the codes, the signatures. They were like pieces of a puzzle carved from someone's nightmare. Then my eyes caught something new, a small sticky note stuck to the back cover. In Dr. Leary's handwriting, barely legible. CP04 equals still alive. Record hidden in external drive. Locker 19, Pier 17. My breath caught. Still alive. The words pulsed in my head. CP04. The sibling the files called presumed deceased. Another sister. Somewhere out there. For a moment, I felt dizzy. The idea that Clara and I weren't alone, that someone else shared our blood, our father's secrets, lit something inside me I hadn't felt in days. Hope. But it was quickly drowned by fear. If she was alive, then my father knew. And if he knew, she was in danger. I whispered to the empty room. I'm not letting him take another one of us. After a few hours, I changed clothes, tucked my hair under a hood, and left through the back alley. The sun was still low, painting the world in weak gold. Pier 17 was on the industrial edge of the city, a stretch of old warehouses and fishing docks where the air smelled of salt and engine oil. I parked behind a seafood depot and walked toward the storage units near the water. The lockboxes lined the wall like metal coffins, each marked with a number fading from rust. Locker 19 was at the far end. I knelt down. The padlock was old, but not broken. I looked around. No cameras, no people. Then I pulled out a small hammer from my bag, a relic from my mother's old toolkit, and hit the lock until it cracked open. Inside was a small metal case. Cold, heavy. I lifted it out and set it on the ground. The latch clicked open easily. Inside was a hard drive wrapped in plastic, a folded map, and a single photograph. The photo was of a young woman, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair and sharp eyes. There was something familiar about her. She looked like Clara, but stronger, angrier. On the back, written in pencil, Iris Pierce, CP04. I sat there for a long moment, the wind howling around me. Another sister.
A name.
A face. I took the drive and the map, sealed the box again, and left. The map led to a small rural town 2 hours north. The note beside it read, Safe House. Contact through E. Marlowe. Whoever E. Marlowe was, they were the only lead I had. The drive north was a blur of cracked highways and anxious thoughts. The world outside the car window looked unreal, like I was moving through someone else's dream. When I finally reached the town, it barely existed on the map. A few gas stations, a diner, and a string of old houses near the forest. The address on the map pointed to an abandoned bookstore, Marlowe and Sons. The front door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, sunlight streamed through dust-coated windows, landing on stacks of old books and paper. Hello. I called softly. A figure emerged from behind a shelf, a man in his 60s with thin gray hair and ink-stained fingers. He studied me for a moment, cautious. You're not supposed to be here. I'm looking for E. Marlowe, I said. That depends who's asking. Elena Pierce. The name made him freeze. Slowly, he took off his glasses. You look just like her. Like who? He hesitated. Iris. My chest tightened. You know her? He nodded. She stayed here. Months ago. Said if someone ever came asking for her, to make sure they were family. He paused, eyes narrowing. You really are? I pulled the photo from my pocket and handed it to him. She's my sister. He looked at it for a long time, then sighed. She told me this day would come. Where is she? He motioned for me to follow him to the back of the store. The small office smelled of old paper and coffee. On the desk sat a computer, cables tangled like vines. She left me a backup of something important, he said. Told me never to open it, only to give it to her sister. He reached under the desk and brought out another hard drive, identical to the one I'd found in the locker. He plugged it in and turned the monitor toward me. The screen flickered to life, revealing folders labeled Pierce Foundation, genetics program, confidential trials, payments. I clicked one. It opened a spreadsheet of financial transfers, millions of dollars funneled from shell companies into St. Christopher's accounts. Every document bore my father's signature. Then I opened a folder marked Project Eden. Inside were scanned documents, birth records, patient photos, and one video file named CP Series Report Final. Marlowe frowned. I've never seen what's inside. You sure you want to? I nodded. The video began with static, then faded into an image of a laboratory. My father stood beside a man in a white coat, younger, confident, smiling for the camera. The Pierce Foundation has achieved compatibility ratio beyond expectations, my father said, his voice steady. Subject CP 03 and CP 04 show near-identical DNA structure. The success proves viable replication. Replication. He wasn't talking about siblings. He was talking about clones. My blood ran cold. Clara and Iris weren't just adopted or related. They were manufactured. My father had used donor DNA, my mother's, to replicate the genetic material for his so-called project. That's why my mother left. That's why Clara had been experimented on. And that's why my father had buried everything, including her. I covered my mouth, shaking. He made them. Marlowe looked at me, eyes filled with sorrow. He wanted to patent the process. Create designer donors for the rich, for anyone willing to pay. Your sisters were prototypes. Tears blurred my vision. Does Iris know? She found out months ago. She tried to go public. But then she vanished. Last I heard, she was hiding overseas. She said she had enough proof to destroy him, but not enough power to survive doing it. I leaned back, numb. Every lie my father had told, every quiet threat, every half-smile suddenly made sense. He wasn't just cruel. He was monstrous. Marlowe unplugged the drive and handed it to me.
Take this.
But be careful. If he knows you've seen it, he'll stop at nothing. I nodded, gripping the drive like a weapon. I'm not running anymore. He gave me a small, sad smile. You sound like Iris. When I left the bookstore, the sun was sinking, bleeding red into the horizon. I drove toward the nearest town, my mind set on one thing, ending this. But halfway down the road, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. A familiar voice rasped through static. Elena. I froze.
Dad.
His tone was calm, almost gentle. I told you that box would ruin lives. Now you've dragged others into this. You killed Clara. I shouted. You ruined everything. A pause. Then, Clara ruined herself. She couldn't handle the truth. You mean your lies? He sighed. You don't understand the world I was building. You think small like your mother. Always emotional, always weak. I clenched my jaw. You don't get to talk about her. He ignored that. Return what you took, Elena. Bring me the drives. We can make this right. Right? I laughed bitterly. You think there's any right left in you? His voice lowered to a whisper. You're my blood. Don't make me treat you like a stranger. Then the line went dead. I sat there for a long minute, shaking, staring at the phone. Something inside me hardened then, the last piece of grief burning into resolve. He wanted the drives? He'd get them. But not the way he expected. That night, I opened my laptop and began copying every file, every document, every signature. I uploaded backups to encrypted clouds, sending one to a journalist friend I hadn't spoken to in years. I wrote a message. If anything happens to me, publish everything. As the progress bar filled, I stared out the window at the dark fields rolling past the motel lights. Somewhere out there, Iris was alive. Somewhere, my father was planning his next move.
But now, so was I.
I whispered to the night, to Clara, to Iris, to the child I used to be before all the lies. This time, Dad's not the only one who knows how to play the game. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something close to peace. Not because the pain had faded, but because I finally knew what to do with it. I didn't recognize myself anymore. When I looked in the mirror the next morning, I saw a stranger with red eyes and clenched fists, a woman who had buried her sister, run from her father, and uncovered a secret so monstrous it made her question her own existence. But I also saw something else.
Strength.
For the first time, I wasn't afraid of my father. I was angry. And anger, I realized, was sharper than fear. The files I'd copied from Marlowe's drive filled my laptop screen like a loaded gun. Documents, financial records, photos, even video evidence of the Project Eden trials. Everything pointed back to my father and his company, Pierce Foundation, as the funder and controller of the illegal genetic experiments. I spent the entire day organizing the files, labeling them, cross-referencing dates, connecting payments to shell accounts. It wasn't just him. There were doctors, investors, even government names scattered across the records. But my father was the center of it all. The puppeteer. The man who threw a box into the river to erase his sins. I created multiple encrypted backups, each hidden under different aliases online. I sent one copy to an old classmate, Rachel Lynn, a journalist working for an independent news outlet in New York. She had once told me, "If you ever have something big, something real, I'll listen." So I sent it all, with one line. The truth about Pierce Foundation. Don't contact me, just read. Then, I turned off my phone. By nightfall, the motel felt too small to contain my thoughts. I grabbed my jacket, the wooden box, and walked outside. The parking lot was empty except for a flickering streetlight and the low hum of crickets. I sat on the hood of my car, holding the box, tracing the carvings with my fingers. RP and CP, the initials that once meant family now felt like scars. "Clara," I whispered. "You tried to warn me. You wanted me to see him for who he really was. I see him now, and I swear, I'll finish what you started." The next morning, I woke to a voicemail. Rachel's voice, rushed and excited. "Elena, I don't know where you got this, but it's massive. The documents check out, transfers, lab records, everything. If this is real, it could destroy the Pierce Foundation and everyone tied to it. But I need you to go on record. Anonymous leaks won't hold without verification." She paused. "Call me back.
Please.
And be careful. I think someone's already digging around for you." I felt the chill crawl up my neck. I wasn't surprised. When I stepped outside my motel room, there was a black SUV parked across the road, tinted windows, engine idling. I turned back and went inside. My father wasn't wasting time. I packed everything in minutes: laptop, drives, photo, the box. Then I slipped out through the back exit and took the dirt trail behind the building. My car was too obvious, so I walked, cutting through woods, keeping my hood up. After half an hour, I reached a diner off the highway, bought a coffee, and called a ride under another name. While waiting, I checked my email. One new message. No sender. No subject. Just a single sentence. "She's waiting for you in Prague." Attached was a photo. The same woman from the locker, Iris, standing near a fountain, her hair shorter now, her expression hardened. My pulse quickened.
Prague.
She was alive. And whoever sent that email, they knew both of us. I didn't think. I just acted. Within an hour, I bought a one-way ticket to Prague using a prepaid card. My passport was still valid. Clara had convinced me years ago to keep it, just in case. I never thought I'd need it for something like this. As the plane took off, I looked out at the fading lights below and whispered, "Hold on, Iris. I'm coming." Prague was colder than I expected. Old cobblestone streets glistening with frost, the river curling through the city like a secret. I stayed in a small hostel near Charles Bridge under the name Elena Marsh. The first night, I didn't find her. But I did find someone following me. At the cafe across from my hostel, a man in a black coat sat alone, pretending to read a newspaper. When I left, he left. When I turned down a narrow street, I saw his reflection in a window behind me. I ducked into an alley, pressed against the wall, and waited. When he passed, I stepped out fast, pressing my phone against his ribs like a weapon. "Why are you following me?" I hissed. He froze, then turned slightly, his accent faintly Eastern European. "You're Elena Pierce? Answer the question." I'm here to protect you, he said quietly. Iris sent me. I hesitated. Prove it. He slowly reached into his coat and pulled out a small folded note. My name was written in Clara's handwriting. If she finds you, trust her. Iris. I lowered the phone. My hands were shaking again, but for once, it wasn't fear. Take me to her, I said.
He nodded.
Not safe here. Follow me. We drove for nearly an hour outside the city, through narrow roads, past sleeping villages and dark fields. Eventually, we stopped at a secluded farmhouse surrounded by birch trees. The lights were on inside. When I stepped through the door, I saw her, standing by the window, arms crossed, eyes wary but alive. Iris. For a second, I couldn't speak. She looked so much like Clara it hurt, same sharp jawline, same steady gaze. But her presence was different. Stronger. Like she'd already lived a dozen battles I hadn't yet faced. Elena, she said softly. I nodded, tears already spilling. It's really you. She smiled faintly. Guess we finally found each other. We sat at the kitchen table for hours. She told me everything. After Clara's death, she had gone underground, knowing our father would hunt her next. Dr. Leary had helped her escape before he was caught or killed. The drives contained proof not just of Project Eden, but of ongoing trials overseas, using data from Clara's research. He never stopped, she said bitterly. He just moved it where no one could see. I showed her the evidence I had, the copies, the files Rachel was preparing to publish. She stared at the laptop screen in silence for a long time, then looked up at me. You're planning to expose him? Yes, I said. But not just him. Everyone involved. I want his empire burned to ash. Her expression darkened, something between pride and fear. You know what that means, right? He won't just lose money. He'll lose everything, reputation, allies, protection. He'll come for you. I know, I said quietly. Let him. Iris leaned back. Clara said you were brave. I guess she was right. Hearing Clara's name and her voice broke something inside me. For a long moment, we just sat there, two women bound by blood and betrayal, both haunted by the same man. Then Iris stood. If we're doing this, we do it right. No half measures. She disappeared into the next room and came back with a small box. Metal. Dented. Familiar. Another one of his boxes. Inside were memory cards, photos, and a letter. This, she said, placing it on the table, is what's left of Mom's notes. She tried to warn people years ago, but no one believed her. He destroyed everything else. I reached for one of the photos. It was our mother, holding two infants. Me and Clara. And behind her, in a glass crib, another baby. Labeled CP04. I felt the air leave my lungs. He cloned us. More like copied, Iris said bitterly. But yes, you and I are his experiments just as much as she was. Silence fell. Outside, the wind rattled the window. Finally, I looked up. Then we end him together. She smiled faintly. I thought you'd never say that. For the next 2 days, we planned. We gathered everything. The drives, Mom's notes, financial records. Iris had contacts who could leak files globally through whistleblower networks. Rachel agreed to coordinate media coverage once we confirmed safety. We timed everything down to the hour, simultaneous releases across multiple outlets, government agencies, and the dark web. But before we could send it all out, Iris received a call on a burner phone. She answered, face unreadable. Then she handed it to me. It's him. My father's voice filled the silence.
Calm.
Controlled. So, both of my daughters together again. How poetic. I gripped the phone tighter. You're finished. He chuckled softly. You've been busy, Elena. I almost admire it. But let me remind you, you're using my blood to destroy me. How does that feel? Liberating. A pause. Then, you don't understand the power you're playing with. Those files don't just expose me. They expose people far beyond your reach. You'll be hunted. Both of you. I looked at Iris. She met my gaze, steady. Then let them come. I said. We're not hiding anymore. The line went dead. We stared at each other, the weight of his threat hanging between us. Then Iris smiled, small, defiant. Time to light the match, she said. That night, as the moon climbed above the birch trees, we hit send. Dozens of encrypted uploads fired across the internet, scattering like sparks into darkness. The truth, our truth, was finally free. I stood by the window, watching the wind ripple across the field, and whispered to Clara's memory.
Sleep now, sis.
It's over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. Because men like my father didn't surrender. They burned everything around them first. And the fire was coming. When the story broke, the world stopped for a moment. By dawn, every major outlet from New York to London was talking about it. The Pierce Foundation scandal, illegal human experimentation exposed, family at the center of genetic ethics storm. My father's face was everywhere, his smiling, perfect corporate headshot paired with words like fraud, exploitation, crimes against humanity. Rachel messaged me just one word: published. For the first time in my life, I felt like Clara could finally rest. Iris and I watched the chaos unfold from a cracked laptop screen in that quiet farmhouse in Prague. Reporters flooded the Pierce headquarters back home. Board members resigned. Governments demanded investigations. Anonymous whistleblowers began releasing even more internal documents, people we hadn't even contacted, suddenly brave enough to speak. It spread like wildfire. But so did the danger. By the second night, Iris noticed cars parked too long near the property. Strange calls with no voices. Our burner phones dying simultaneously. He's moving fast, she said, pacing. He's not going to court. He's going for cleanup. Let him try, I said, though my voice trembled more than I wanted to admit. She turned sharply. You don't understand. He's got connections everywhere. He won't send lawyers. He'll send people who make problems disappear. I looked her dead in the eye. Then we disappear first. We left the farmhouse before sunrise, taking only what mattered: drives, passports, cash, and one photograph of Clara between us. The wind off the fields was cold and sharp, and as the house vanished behind us, I realized how little was left of our old lives. We drove east, staying off main roads, avoiding cameras and hotels. Iris knew people, journalists, activists, the kind who lived their lives in shadows. One of them, a man named Anton, ran a safe network that could hide us until we figured out our next move. By the time we reached the safe house, a converted train station outside Budapest, the news had exploded. Every outlet now tied my father to a web of political donors and biotech companies laundering research money through humanitarian fronts. Leaked videos showed clinical tests on infants, all traced to his name. Pierce Foundation stock collapsed. But my father? He was silent. Not a statement. Not an interview. Nothing. The man who had built his life on control had vanished. It should have made me feel safe. It didn't. Because silence, in his world, was always the prelude to destruction. That night, Iris and I sat on the floor of the safe house, the dim light flickering across her face. She looked exhausted but alive for the first time, truly alive. We did it, she said softly. I nodded, but part of me couldn't relax. He won't take this quietly. She smiled bitterly. He never does. Outside, rain started to fall, soft at first, then heavier, like it always did when something bad was about to happen. We went to sleep in shifts. When it was my turn to rest, I dreamed of Clara again, standing by the river, holding that wooden box, whispering, "Don't believe him." I woke to the sound of glass breaking. A second later, the lights went out. "Iris!" I shouted. She was already up, gun in hand. "Get down." The next moment, the front door burst open. 3 figures in dark coats rushed in, flashlights cutting through the room. We dove behind a table as bullets tore through the wall. Iris fired back. 2 shots, fast and clean. 1 man fell. The others retreated briefly. "Go through the back," she yelled. "Run. I'm not leaving you." She looked at me, eyes fierce. "You have the files. You're the story now. Go." Another bullet shattered the lamp beside us. She shoved me toward the rear hallway. I grabbed the drives and bolted, heart slamming in my chest. Behind me, I heard her shouting, and then another gunshot. I stumbled out into the rain, slipping on the slick concrete, my lungs burning. The night swallowed everything. Gunfire, screams, the sharp crack of tires spinning on gravel. When I looked back, flames were licking up the side of the safe house. "Iris!" I screamed. But there was no answer. I ran until my legs gave out. By dawn, I was miles away, soaked, shaking, and alone again. I hid in an abandoned church on the outskirts of town. The pews were covered in dust, the stained glass windows cracked and faded. I sat there in silence, clutching the drives against my chest. Every part of me wanted to collapse. But another part, the part that still heard Clara's laugh, still felt Iris's defiance, wouldn't let me. If he'd killed her, I'd make sure it meant something. By noon, the fire at the safe house was all over the news. Unidentified explosion, suspected gas leak. No mention of Iris. No survivors found. I threw the phone against the wall and sank to the floor. The grief came in waves, not quiet tears, but raw, choking sobs that tore out of me until I couldn't breathe. I'd lost both my sisters to him, and this time, there would be no forgiveness. That evening, I opened my laptop and accessed the encrypted cloud again. Thousands of downloads. The story had gone global, the outrage unstoppable. Governments freezing assets, agencies opening criminal investigations. Pierce Foundation was dead. But Richard Pierce, the man, was still out there. And I wasn't going to let him disappear into the dark. I called Rachel through secure line. "Jesus, Elena," she said as soon as she answered. "Where are you?" "They're saying someone attacked one of the sources." "I know," I said hoarsely. "It was us." "Us." "Iris is gone." Silence. "Elena, I'm so sorry." I swallowed the ache in my throat. "I'm not done, Rachel. Not until he's the one buried." She hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going home." "Elena, don't." He already did." I hung up. 2 days later, I was back in the States. I landed under a false identity, blending in through customs with forged papers Iris had arranged before everything went to hell. When I stepped out of the airport, I could smell home, that humid, heavy air that never really changed. I drove straight to the river. The same bridge. The same water where he'd thrown the first box. The place it had all begun. The sky was dim, streaked orange with sunset. I parked the car and walked down to the bank. The current was slow now, calm, as if nothing terrible had ever happened here. I knelt, touching the wet stones where I had once stood, watching him destroy evidence. But this time, I wasn't the broken daughter. This time, I was his reckoning. As I stood, headlights appeared behind me. I didn't move. His voice drifted from the dark. "You always were dramatic." I turned. My father stepped out of a sleek black car, looking older, thinner, but his eyes, those cold, brilliant eyes, hadn't changed. "Hello, Elena. You killed her." He sighed, as if bored. "You say that every time someone dies near me. You think I control everything." "You do. That's your sickness." He smiled faintly. "You've done impressive work. I underestimated you." I clenched my fists. "Good. Keep underestimating me." He took a slow step closer, the gravel crunching under his shoes. "You've destroyed an empire. For what? Revenge? Justice? Do you think the world cares about truth? It only cares about who wins." "I'm not here to win," I said. "I'm here to end you." His smile vanished. "You don't have it in you. Try me." He looked around, scanning the river, the shadows, the trees, calculating as always. Then his voice softened. "I lost everything because of your mother's weakness. I built a world where we could have been gods. You and your sisters could have inherited it. But you chose to crawl among mortals." I stepped closer until I could see the reflection of the water in his pupils. "No, Dad. We chose to be human. Something you'll never understand." He exhaled, and suddenly pulled a gun. "I can't let you keep breathing." But I was faster. I threw the small silver locket, Clara's locket, straight at his hand. It hit the barrel, knocking it sideways just as he fired. The bullet sliced past my shoulder, burning my skin. I lunged, grabbing the gun. We struggled, his strength fading, mine burning with everything I'd lost. The gun slipped from his grasp, landing near the edge. He stumbled backward, tripping on the slick stones. I saw the shock in his eyes, the first real fear I'd ever seen in him, as he lost his balance and fell into the river. The current caught him instantly, dragging him under. I stood there, chest heaving, staring at the ripples fading into the dark. No scream. No last words. Just silence. For a long time I didn't move. Then I knelt, picked up the locket, and whispered, "For Clara. For Iris. For Mom." The river kept flowing, steady, endless, carrying away the man who'd drowned so many secrets. And as I watched, I realized something painful and beautiful all at once. Revenge didn't bring peace. It brought truth. And sometimes that was enough. For days after the river, I didn't feel real. I kept expecting to wake up, to hear Clara humming in the kitchen, Iris laughing somewhere in the next room. But every time I opened my eyes, I was alone. The world didn't stop because my father died. It moved on, faster than I could process. News headlines shifted from outrage to aftermath. Pierce Foundation founder found dead, apparent suicide. Investigations ongoing into genetic scandal. Authorities freeze global assets linked to Pierce Empire. Suicide. That was the story they told. No one knew I was there. No one knew what really happened by that river. Part of me was relieved. No courts, no trials, no explanations. The world saw the monster he was. They didn't need to see me becoming one, too. I buried the locket near the riverbank, under the oak tree where Clara and I used to play as kids. I didn't mark the spot. I didn't need to. I'd remember it forever. Then I left. I drove for hours, across state lines, through towns that didn't know my name, past lives I'd never have. Every mile felt like a breath I'd been holding for years finally escaping my chest. But peace didn't follow. It never does when revenge fills the silence. 3 weeks later, I ended up in a coastal town in Maine, small, quiet, the kind of place where people didn't ask questions. I rented a tiny house overlooking the water. The ocean reminded me of the river, but it was wider, cleaner, endless. At night, I could still hear the splash, the sound of him vanishing beneath the current. Sometimes, I wondered if it would ever stop echoing. I started writing again, not emails or reports, but everything I'd never said. To Clara, to Iris, to Mom. You were right. You were brave. I see everything now. One morning, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, printed in neat letters. I opened it cautiously. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of the aftermath. Investigators dragging the river. The pier cordoned off. A press conference with federal agents. And then, at the bottom, one photo stopped me cold. It was of a woman. Dark hair. Sharp eyes. Standing in a crowd outside a courthouse.
Alive.
Iris. My knees nearly gave out. I stared at the photo until the ink blurred from my tears. It couldn't be real. I saw the explosion. I heard the gunfire. But the photo wasn't fake. I could see the small scar on her chin, the one she'd gotten as a child, exactly where Clara's had been. Attached to the photo was a note written in block letters. "She's safe. Don't look for her yet." No name. No signature. I sank into the chair, shaking. Relief hit me first, raw and overwhelming. But then came confusion, suspicion, and a kind of dread I couldn't name. If Iris was alive, who sent this? And what did yet mean? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind like a whisper. By dawn, I decided I couldn't wait. I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, her voice hoarse. "Elena, where the hell have you been? Do you know what's happening?" "I've been off the grid," I said.
Why?
"What happened?" Everything exploded after the story. Governments opened formal cases. Half his partners are being indicted. But the craziest part, she paused. There's talk of someone leaking new evidence, files that weren't in our original dump. Data from Project Eden's final phase. Someone's feeding it directly to international prosecutors. My heartbeat spiked.
Who?
No one knows. The source uses the codename CP-04. The air went out of the room. Rachel, I whispered. That's my sister. She was silent. Then she's alive. Or someone's pretending to be her. Elena, if she's alive, she's still in danger. These people. I know, I interrupted. I'll find her. Don't, she said firmly. You both did enough. Let the system finish this. The system? I laughed bitterly. You think the same system that let him do this for decades will protect her now? Elena, I can't sit here and do nothing. I hung up before she could stop me. The next morning, I packed my bag again. Some part of me hated myself for it, for not being able to stop running toward pain. But I had to know. If Iris was alive, I had to see her. The trail led me to Geneva. The leaks Rachel mentioned had been traced to a small humanitarian network operating near the United Nations district. I spent days following every whisper, every clue, until I finally found someone who recognized her name. A woman named Nadia, a translator, met me at a cafe near the lake. Iris Pierce, she repeated quietly, stirring her coffee.
Yes.
She came through here 2 weeks ago. She met with investigators. She was scared, but determined. Do you know where she went? Nadia hesitated.
No.
She said she'd disappear after she handed over the files. She didn't want to be found. Did she say anything else? She said if anyone came looking, I should give them this. Nadia slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a single flash drive, silver, engraved with 3 letters, CI. What's this? I asked. Nadia shrugged. She said you'd understand. I didn't.
Not yet.
I thanked her and left, heart pounding. I walked along the lake, found a quiet bench, and plugged the drive into my laptop. A single folder appeared. For Elena. Inside was a video file. When I pressed play, the screen flickered, and then Iris appeared. Her face was tired, bruised, but her eyes were steady. Elena, she said softly. If you're watching this, it means I'm still running. Or gone again. I know you went back to him. I know what you did. I froze. Don't carry guilt for it. You did what I couldn't. You finished it. But listen to me, this isn't over. Project Eden wasn't just a Pierce Foundation operation. It was part of something bigger, CI, the Continental Ethics Initiative. They've been using our data for years under new names, new labs. And they're still out there. She paused, eyes glinting with something fierce. Dad was just the beginning. The real architects are higher. Untouchable. But I've got their names now. I just need time. The video glitched, static filling the screen. Then her voice returned, softer. If you love me, don't look for me. Not yet. When it's time, you'll know. The screen went black. I sat there, stunned, watching my reflection in the dark glass. Iris wasn't just alive. She was fighting the war our father started, only on a scale I couldn't imagine. CI, the initials burned into my mind. Continental Ethics Initiative. The same organization my father used to boast about in speeches, claiming it was the future of moral science. I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring up at the gray sky. So it wasn't over. It would never really be over. Not until every piece of that empire fell. And Iris, my sister, my mirror, my ghost, was still out there, carrying the truth forward. I stayed in Geneva for a few days, trying to decide what to do next. The world had already begun moving on. The news cycle was shifting, the outrage cooling. People forgot fast. But I couldn't forget. I visited a small chapel near the edge of the city one evening, the kind that smelled like candle wax and old stone. I lit 3 candles, one for Mom, one for Clara, one for Iris. As the flames flickered, I realized something. My revenge had ended my father's reign, but not his legacy. There were still others, men and women just like him, hiding behind research grants and charity banners, pretending to save humanity while dissecting it. And maybe that's why I was still alive. Not to escape, but to finish what we'd started. When I left the chapel, I saw a letter taped to the side mirror of my car. No stamp, no name. Just one sentence, written in Iris's handwriting. When the water runs red again, follow it. I didn't know what it meant, but somehow I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something larger. The river had taken our father, but his sins still flowed, through veins, through files, through people who thought they could play God. And I, Elena Pierce, the daughter he tried to erase, the sister he couldn't break, wasn't done yet. I started the car. The engine roared to life. Somewhere out there, Iris was fighting in the shadows.
And now so would I. Not out of vengeance this time,
but for redemption. For Clara. For Iris. For all the ones who never had a voice. The road stretched ahead, empty and endless. I drove toward it, into the dark, into whatever waited next. Because the truth, once set free, doesn't die, it multiplies. And so did we. It's strange how silence feels different once you've survived it. Before, it used to suffocate me. The quiet after Clara's death, the stillness after every secret my father buried. But now, silence felt alive. It hummed with something new. Purpose. I spent months in motion after Geneva. I moved between cities, names, and safe houses, chasing whispers of CEI. The Continental Ethics Initiative wasn't a foundation, it was a labyrinth. It had its hands in genetics, pharmaceuticals, even defense research. My father had been only one branch. Cut him off, and 10 more grew back. But everywhere I looked, I found traces of Iris. Hidden messages. Ghost signals. Every clue felt like she was leading me somewhere, guiding me like Clara once did when we were kids playing scavenger hunts through the woods. Then one night in Berlin, I received another message. Encrypted and signed, but unmistakably hers. The river runs red. Endgame. Come alone. Attached was a GPS coordinate. I opened it. The location was in northern Norway, a research facility near the edge of the Arctic Circle.
Cold.
Remote. The kind of place built to hide something enormous. I booked a cargo flight under an alias, landed in Tromsø, and drove north for hours through endless, white silence. The sky above was a gray ocean of clouds, and the wind howled like the ghosts of every lie our father ever told. By the time I reached the facility, night had fallen. The building loomed out of the snow like a shipwreck, metal, concrete, and glass, with floodlights cutting through the fog. It looked abandoned, but I knew better. Inside, the corridors were cold and humming. My boots echoed off the floor as I followed the sound of distant machinery. I carried nothing but a small backpack, the drives, Clara's locket, and one flashlight. The air smelled sterile, chemical. Halfway down a hallway lined with numbered doors, I saw it, a familiar marking etched into the wall. CI/Eden Reclamation Project. I froze. My throat tightened. He hadn't created Project Eden alone. They'd resurrected it. And now they were still running it without him. I stepped closer. Beyond a glass door was a large chamber filled with pods. Dozens of them, circular, glowing faint blue. Inside each, something floated, human shapes, suspended, motionless. My stomach turned. I pressed my hand against the glass. They weren't alive. Not yet. They were growing. I stumbled back, breath shaking. Clara. Iris.
Me.
We had just been prototypes. And now, the perfect lineage was continuing, refined, replicated, scaled. A voice echoed behind me. I knew you'd come. I turned. Iris stood in the doorway. Older, thinner, her hair pulled back, eyes harder but unmistakably hers. I thought I'd lost you, I whispered. You almost did, she said softly. But someone had to finish this. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, but something in her face stopped me. A distance. A sadness. What is this place?
I asked.
She looked around the lab. The future they're still trying to build. The one he died for. I traced his old partners here. They're rebuilding under new names, using new governments. Everything we burned, they rebuilt in silence. I swallowed. Then we'll burn it again. She smiled faintly, almost sadly. You always were the fiery one. I stepped closer. You sent me that message. When the water runs red again. Why now? Because it's time to end the river, she said. I frowned. What does that mean? She turned toward one of the pods. Inside floated a young woman, barely 20. Her face was peaceful, her hair pale brown, her skin unblemished. She's the last of us, Iris said quietly. CP-05. The final iteration.
Grown from our combined genome.
They were preparing to transfer her to a private facility next week. My chest ached. A clone of us? Of all three of us, she said. You, me, Clara. They called her Eden Reclaimed. The perfect genetic reset. The end of our bloodline's corruption. I stared at the girl in the pod, the hum of the machines surrounding us. She looks so innocent. She is, Iris whispered. That's why I can't let them take her. The words hit me slowly. What are you saying? She turned to me, eyes glistening. There's a fail-safe in the system, a way to shut everything down. But it'll destroy the facility. And everything in it. I took a step back. Iris, no. It's the only way, she said. We end the river here, once and for all. Then we take her. I pleaded. We save her. She shook her head. You can't save what was built to be controlled. If they find her, they'll just start again. The conflict inside me tore like paper. I'd spent years chasing truth, justice, revenge, and now, when I finally had my sister back, she was asking me to lose her all over again. Why you? I whispered. Because I'm the ghost, she said. I was never meant to exist this long. But you still can. I grabbed her hand.
No.
Not again. I'm not losing another sister. She squeezed my hand gently. You're not losing me. You're setting me free. Before I could argue, alarms blared, red lights flashing across the ceiling.
They know, she said.
Go, Elena. Not without you. She smiled, that same small, fierce smile Clara used to have when she dared the world to stop her. Tell her story right this time. She turned, running toward the control room. I followed, shouting her name, but she was already behind the security door before I reached it. Through the glass, I saw her type a long sequence into the panel. The sirens grew louder. Steam hissed from the vents. The lights on the pods began flashing red. I slammed my fists against the door. Iris, please. She looked up at me, calm, radiant, unafraid. Then she mouthed the words. For Clara. A blinding light swallowed everything. When I woke, I was lying in snow outside the collapsed facility. My ears rang. The sky was painted in pink dawn. Smoke curled from the ruins below. I crawled to my feet, coughing, my body shaking. The ground trembled with distant explosions as the rest of the complex imploded inward. It was gone. All of it. I never found her body. But I didn't need to.
I knew.
Iris had finally done what neither of us could before. She'd buried the last lie. I stood there for hours, watching the flames fade against the snow. The cold stung my skin, but I didn't move. I let the silence wrap around me like a promise. When I finally walked away, I left everything behind, the drives, the locket, the past. I didn't go home. I didn't even know what that word meant anymore. Instead, I kept moving city to city, border to border, working quietly with the journalists and lawyers Rachel connected me to. Every file, every document Iris had left was turned into public record. The world couldn't ignore us anymore. And slowly, stories began to surface. Survivors, whistleblowers, victims of other programs. People who'd been silenced for years finally stepping into light. That was our legacy, not revenge, not blood, but truth. Months later, I received one last envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photo. It was of a little girl, maybe 5 years old, standing on a beach, laughing as she chased a red kite. On the back, written in Iris's handwriting. She made it. I felt my breath catch. The child in the photo, she had my eyes. Clara's smile. Iris's chin. CP05. She was alive. I pressed the photo to my chest and wept. For Iris, for Clara, for every life our father had twisted. For the river that had finally stopped running red. Years later, I returned to that same riverbank one last time. The oak tree still stood, older, taller, branches reaching toward the sky. I sat beneath it, watching the water flow, gentle now, no longer carrying secrets. I closed my eyes and let the wind brush through my hair. In that moment, I felt them both beside me. Clara's laugh, light as sunlight. Iris's voice, steady and sure. And I realized something. Revenge had given me release. Truth had given me purpose. But forgiveness, the quiet kind, the one you don't say out loud, that's what finally set me free. I looked down at the river, whispering, "We're free now." A ripple crossed the surface, catching the morning light. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Because the box, the river, the pain, they weren't just endings. They were beginnings. The kind that start not with vengeance, but with understanding, with hope, with life.